Hey guys, I thought I would just do a little short video, I'll try and keep it short, of my experience coming back to the Isle of Man recently and everything that entailed with the isolation period. And I, of course, opted in to the early 7-day COVID test as well. So I just thought I'd go through everything that I've experienced with that as well. So, first of all, before I came back to the Isle of Man, I had to apply online for the permission to enter the Isle of Man, and also a landing card. Now you've got to do that 48 hours before you return, and then they email you back what they call an RR number, which I believe stands for resident returning. So I actually spoke to the Cabinet Office on the phone about this before I did it online, and when I spoke to them on the phone, they seemed like, the way they were talking to me about it, they seemed like it was a very strict process. They said, you've got to go onto this website, click this link, give the correct information, how you're travelling back, your flight numbers. You've got to have all that information with you when you land. If you don't, you may not be allowed in to the island. So it seemed very strict when I was on the phone. And when I landed, I made sure I had all that information in my bag in case I was asked for it. I was expecting to be asked for it. I was also expecting to be asked further questions because, bearing in mind, I filled out that information 48 hours before I returned to the Isle of Man. So that leaves 48 hours of me potentially developing symptoms. So I was really quite shocked when I landed and I wasn't asked for any of that information at all. I wasn't asked for an RR number or any paperwork at all regarding any entry permissions. I also wasn't asked any information about whether I had any symptoms. I didn't have any temperature check or anything like that, which kind of surprised me as well. It was literally a case of flash my passport straight through. Now, I know some people have said, because I've put this on Facebook before, and some people have said, oh, well, that information should all be within your emails, saying that if you have COVID symptoms, you should inform someone. And yes, that's true. It does say that. At the very bottom in small print, it does say that. But it doesn't matter that information's in an email that was sent to me 2 days before I travelled. I still believe it should be repeated to me by an officer before I'm allowed to enter, the other side of the security barrier into the Isle of Man, because it's very important. So I didn't get a sense that the people that were dealing with me at the airport had any training or qualifications in regards to COVID protection and prevention control. I am qualified in that, so it's something I kind of expected them to ask me. I know the questions because I've had to ask patients these questions. So, I was prepared with the answers, basically. So I was a bit disappointed about that. So anyway, the normal rules are, when you arrive on the Isle of Man, you're supposed to go straight from the airport or the ferry, however you get to the island. Keep your mask on and travel directly to your house. And from that moment on, you stay in your house for those 14 days. And of course, if you have any symptoms during those 14 days, you contact 111 and explain to them any worries or any symptoms you may have. So, since arriving to the island, I arrived on the 4th of September, and they announced that people could opt in to get an early COVID test on day 7. But you had to pay for this yourself. You had to pay £50 for this COVID test, which I did, because I thought, well, to be honest with you, after 7 days of being stuck in, I was climbing the walls. So I thought, you know what, I'll pay to get the COVID test. At least then I can at least go for a walk, get some fresh air, get some exercise. But actually, I am now on day... What are we now? I think I'm on day 11, is it? I think I'm on day 10. Just looking at the calendar. And my experience is I wouldn't encourage anybody to pay for that COVID test, because you get the test on day 7, so you've already been isolating 7 days. You get the test on day 7. You then get the results on day 8. And of course, if they're clear, you're then allowed to do certain things. Now, I've got a list of the rules, which I'll read to you in a minute. But my point is, by the time you've had the test and actually got the results and been told, you know what, it's negative, it's all clear, so you can now sort of go out and have some exercise and stay away from people and what have you. By the time you actually get that result, you've only got 6 days left anyway. And the rules are so strict, it's almost pointless, because you can't do anything anyway. So I'll just give you a quick description of what I've got. So straight away, I got the phone call on day 8 to say my COVID test was negative. This was from 111. They then informed me that they would send me the new rules and regulations by which I had to conform to. So the email is as follows: Dear Kevin, the sample taken from you for testing for coronavirus has indicated that you are not infected with or contaminated with the coronavirus. As such, you are no longer required to self-isolate within the meaning of the Emergency Powers Coronavirus Continuation Number 2 Regulations 2020. The attached direction notice specifies the conditions you must now comply with in accordance with those regulations if at any time you leave the premises where you were self-isolating before the end of the 14 days from entering the island. So then I'll just give you a quick read of the... I'll just skim through it basically. So it says, COVID-19 direction notice following negative coronavirus test results for Isle of Man resident arrivals. And then it lists there the date of my commencement and the end of the 14 isolation period for me, 14-day isolation period. So it's the Emergency Powers Coronavirus Continuation Number 2 Regulations 2020. The Chief Secretary, by virtue of the powers contained within the Emergency Powers Coronavirus Continuation Number 2 Regulations 2020, now gives you the following direction notice in accordance with Regulation 7A of those regulations, which requires you to take immediate action for the remainder of the period of 14 days from the date of your arrival on the Isle of Man. Now, I wasn't aware that the Chief Secretary had the powers to tell me what to do, but apparently on the Isle of Man they do. It says, the sample taken from you for testing for coronavirus has indicated that you are not infected with or contaminated with coronavirus, and as such you are no longer required to self-isolate within the meaning of the Emergency Powers Coronavirus Continuation Number 2 Regulations 2020. This direction notice specifies the conditions you must now comply with in accordance with those regulations if at any time you leave the premises where you were self-isolating before the end of the 14 days. So we'll go through this just very quickly. So the direction notice is issued by the Chief Secretary, and it's Regulation 7A of the regulations you are hereby required and directed to comply with. So the following conditions are: if you leave the premises at any time that you are self-isolating in before the end of the 14-day isolation period is up, you must not go to a gym, sports centre, public house, nightclub, restaurant or cafe, including any such premises at which eating or drinking outdoors is permitted. You must not attend the premises of a nursery, preschool or other childcare centre, a school, university, Isle of Man or any other educational premises. You must not enter a shop other than to buy food, drink or medicine. Well, I mean, come on. Why else would I enter a shop? You know what I mean? That's ridiculous. You must not enter You must not enter a nursing, care or residential home unless, prior to arriving at the home, you have informed the manager of that home that you are subject to a direction under the Emergency Powers Coronavirus Continuation Number 2 Regulations 2020, and the manager has agreed that you may enter that home. So basically, as long as the manager of a care home agrees that I can come in, so that's pointless as well, isn't it really? Even though I could potentially infect vulnerable people, it comes down to the care home manager. I don't agree with that either. You must not, other than in an emergency, enter Nobles Hospital or any other health or care facility unless prior to arriving at the hospital or care facility, as the case may be, you have informed the hospital or care facility that you are subject to a direction under the Emergency Powers Act Number 2 Regulations 2020, and the hospital or care facility has agreed that you may nevertheless enter the hospital or care facility. I tell you what, this is written so badly. You must not attend a gathering of more than 10 people. See, now I don't agree with that either. So according to that, this is clause F of the continuation regulations 2020. So according to this, I can attend a gathering of 9 people. I don't agree that I should be allowed to do that either, personally. You must not attend your place of work if your employment requires you to interact face-to-face with any member of the public other than your work colleagues. So basically what that's saying is, if I work with the public, so I work in, say, a shop, retail shop, I can't go back to work because I'm face-to-face with public. If I work in an office environment with, say, 100 other colleagues in close proximity to me in the office, I can go back to work. Now, this doesn't state that it has to be okay with your manager or company, but I think it should be in there that because I would have thought you have to inform your company, but it doesn't state that. So I disagree with that as well. The last clause, clause H, you must not use or travel on any bus, tram or train. And then it's signed by the Chief Secretary, Cabinet Office, Isle of Man. So basically, there's not an awful lot you can do. Which is fine. I mean, you know, I think people fully expect to come back and isolate for 14 days and stay away from people and stay in their own home. And, you know, I think the majority of us with common sense know to do this to protect our island and our community and the vulnerable people in it. So, anyway, my advice is save your money. Don't waste it on an early test because, as you just heard, it's in my view, pointless. There's not an awful lot you can do, and you may as well just wait for those 14 days to finish and save yourself the money. So apart from that, my other experience is I don't know what they call themselves, the entry officers, I was going to say border force, but they're not really border force. They're not warrant officers. They are government workers, working for the Department of Infrastructure, I believe, who check up on you to make sure you're home. So in one day, this is all in one day, last week, so I think this was 3 or 4 days after I arrived back onto the island, but all in one day, I had 3 phone calls in the space of 5 hours. 2 of them were from the 111 centre, asking me that I'm home, and asking me if I'm, keeping within the isolation rules. And then I got another phone call from the, I don't know what you call them, the entry officers or whatever they are, asking me the same, or asking if I'm aware that I have to isolate, like I'm basically some kind of an idiot. And then 2 of them turned up at my door unannounced. I was asleep, and two of them came to my door and flashed their government IDs at me. Again, they didn't seem to have an awful lot of knowledge about COVID and infection prevention control. It was all a bit amateurish in my opinion. They didn't have any PPE on either, so if I had have been infectious, potentially they were breaching my isolation by asking me to come to the door. So I think some of these things, yes, I'm glad they're being done. I think some of these things have to be done, and I'm glad about that to protect our community. But I also feel like things could be done a lot better. I think there needs to be a lot more training to the staff that are carrying out these duties. I really don't feel like they're trained very well or knowledgeable within, again, as I've said, COVID infection prevention control. I've also been watching some of the G4S employees that are in charge of asking these types of questions to people that are coming off the boat, because I can see from my front window, the boat, where I live, I can see across the road the boat coming in and the passengers getting off. And I can also see the G4S security employees. So again, I don't think they're trained in how to take on and put on and take off PPE, as I've been watching them. So I think that's about it really, but yeah, again, waste of money, wouldn't bother doing it. And I've got now another, including today, 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got 4 days until my isolation's up. And yeah, I can't wait. I'll be honest with you, I can't wait to get out and do things. But it's certainly not been easy being stuck in. And I think, in all honesty, my health has probably deteriorated without me even knowing it from being stuck in for 14 days, because my sleep pattern's terrible, because I've not had anything constructive to do. You know, I'm out of a routine. I'm not going to work every day, so I'm not tired because I've not been doing anything. You know, I live in an apartment, so I don't have a garden to go out into. So yeah, as far as like exercise, sleep pattern's been terrible. So you know, my health is probably a lot worse for being isolated for the 2 weeks than it was beforehand. So anyway, I was trying to keep this short. It's to 20 minutes now. So yeah, I just thought there might be some interesting things there for all you guys. I know I've read out a lot of information about this notice sheet and legislation, but I just thought for those people who might be considering going away, or for those that are returning to the island, some of this might be beneficial to you. So yeah, I'll leave it there. Thanks, guys.